Greetings, acolytes! I generally try not to make a habit of immediately reacting to certain events concerning both how I envision the future of my channel and how I tend to react to major and controversial developments, that is, slowly forming a more coherent opinion as time marches on. I do not like to jump into conclusions or get swept up by trends. I recognize that what I'm about to say will be controversial, no matter how I phrase it. I have my own opinion. However, rather than trying to impose it on you, or if you share it, reinforce it in you, I wish to give you the way I approach this particular topic and by that give you another perspective. I do not necessarily want to convince you to share in my opinion. Rather, I respectfully ask you to think about what I will say and, if possible, understand my perspective. I think that the killer of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, did nothing that is admirable and should not be supported. I believe the killer should not be cheered or made a hero. I think they should face criminal liability for their act if proven to be true beyond a reasonable doubt in front of an impartial court. Now, I know how that might sound, especially for those who know my opinions on certain other topics, but let me assure you, I have a point to make with this, an actual point, and this is not about being a contrarian or to gain rage clicks on the internet. And believe me, this position is most certainly doesn't come from some lost love between me and the insurance industrial complex of the United States. Let's quickly recap what happened to make sure we are all on the same page, then let me present my arguments to you. You can send me to hell in the comment section afterwards. I will state now that I will not go through all the details of the killing, only the most important parts that are relevant to my general point. It is important also because as a developing situation, new things come out which might render some points mute in the future. In the early morning hours of the 4th of December 2024 in New York City, Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare Group, a US medical insurance company, was walking towards a conference held in the New York Hilton Midtown Hotel when a masked gunman fatally shot him. As of the making of the video, the person suspected of the killing is 26-year-old Luigi Mangione, who allegedly had personal ill feelings against the US healthcare system, particularly how insurance companies handle coverage, as well as for an alleged back condition that he has. Interestingly, there have been an observably high amount of support for the killer's action, people publicly supporting them and their alleged views. That is the baseline from which I will form this argument. Look, I have to say that when it comes to the US healthcare system, I agree that it is a tragic and terrible institution. There are, of course, different opinions and news about it, some of which might be true and other less so. United Healthcare, for example, is apparently rejecting 32% of insurance claims, which is the highest in the industry. It has also been claimed that United Healthcare used a faulty AI tool with 90% error rate, but based on the available information, I haven't found definitive proof that this is true, it is just named in a lawsuit. There have also been a deluge of information released regarding the victim Brian Thompson too. Some might be true, most probably not. All I will just say that I understand that there are a lot of negative feelings about the victim and the company which he represented. Look, I can personally criticize this system for hours, even probably make an entire video about it. This whole insurance system in the US might be exploitative, callous, unfair, and heartbreakingly evil, which denies essential care for millions of people, probably causing an untold number of them ruining themselves for life or dying in the name of shareholder dividends and profit. It is a system that, according to a lot of people, including me, even though I'm not people, thank you very much, has to be abolished and or reformed, one way or the other, and much of the outrage about these practices I feel to be completely fair and justified. And yet I'm here and I disapprove of the killer's actions, and I will tell you why. If you would listen though, because, you can just switch off the video if you want to, and then you don't have to listen to it, and then I cannot tell you why. Anyway, here are my thoughts. Believe me, I have heard a lot of arguments, even probably those you are currently forming in your head. But no matter how terrible the US healthcare system is, how awful a company United Healthcare might be, or how much of the suffering of US patients was directly or indirectly might have been caused by Brian Thompson himself, these arguments ultimately fall short of justifying the consequences of arbitrarily accepting the practice of killings in any degree. To answer why is that, we will have to answer the following questions. Why do laws exist, and what makes a democracy a democracy? Laws are the fundamental building blocks of a modern organized society. They exist to resolve differences, to guarantee personal liberties, and to maintain order so that no harm may fall on innocents. A democratic state and society is ultimately a system of respected, equally and fairly enforced laws, without which it descends into tyranny and anarchy. This is the principle of the rule of law, where everybody is equally accountable and subject to the same due process. Sure, it can be argued that the system in the US is unfair, imperfect, and that argument would be, in my opinion, correct. I ask you, however, to look back at the latest arguable breakdown of this system, when President Joe Biden pardoned his own son, and Donald Trump, through nefarious means, dodged responsibility for criminal acts he committed. Those are similar bendings of the law. Or going a bit further back, this breakdown of law and order evokes images of lynch mobs and oppression of the pre-civil rights era. I also have to remind you that the civil rights era happened because of a regression of institutions, a violent breakdown of laws that after the Civil War on paper guaranteed equality. The roving bands of white supremacist militias fought decades to prevent this enforcement. When proper enforcement disappeared, the most harm fell on those least capable of defending themselves. In essence, there is no difference between a murderer of a CEO getting to go free and a KKK lynch mob not being convicted. Both represent a failure and breakdown of law and justice. Arbitrary exceptions being made and supported by certain segments of society. It was not the breakdown of the rule of law that advanced the US from that era, quite the opposite. It was the reinforcement of that, the crafting of better laws and enforcement so that people became more equal before the law. Freedom and democracy fundamentally means the support of a law-based system under which everybody is equal and accountable. Yes, there are imperfections, but the goal should be to better the rule of law and not to tear it apart. To support and cheer for this killing, to let the murderer go, is to spit on this idea. It is a declaration that laws should not matter, that all the innocents whom it protects should not be protected. If we truly care about the lives of the innocent, we can't allow ourselves such arbitrary exceptions, because it would mean that not everybody is equal and not everybody should be accountable. Sure, you might feel that your personal, arbitrary, morally justifiable exceptions might be righteous, but if that exception is granted to you, then anybody can get that exception. And you will be furious when somebody else who you don't agree with gets that arbitrary exception that is morally justifiable to them, but not to you. This remains a fact, regardless of where you stand politically. I would like to make a few remarks before my departure to work on my larger projects. I have to reiterate, the US healthcare system is broken and people are right to be furious with it. But this killing will not make that system go away. If anything, it might bring us closer to a world where people under it suffer more. Because when laws can be ignored, what will be stopping these companies? Just to be worse. There should be consequences for their actions as well, and I encourage everyone to make their voices of discontent be heard, and to vote in leaders who will actually make it better rather than people who admittedly want to make it worse. It is up to you to decide what to do and what to think about what I have just said. I ultimately think that everybody should receive the same privileges as well as the same level of accountability before the law. First and foremost, they are there to protect you as well as the other innocents. If you break it down, it will ultimately hurt those the most who are the most in need of its protection. Have a great further existence. If you like my content, please like and subscribe as well as share your thoughts in the comment section. I was Kane, and the secret of immortality is